to one special veteran. That is what the Quilts of Valor organization, www.qovf.org. And then they could say, I know someone who deserves a Quilt of Valor, and they just contact them, and then they will get a local representative like yourself.
Yes.
You would be contacted then.
If you have a person that you know, a relative maybe that lives in Nevada, and you go to the website, it'll download to that person in Nevada. If it comes to California, it will come to 3 individuals. If you know somebody locally that needs a Quilt of Valor, they can email me personally.
Okay. And this is your email address. Jerilyn Lightfoot. It's jerilyn.lightfoot@qovf.org. Quilts of Valor Foundation, California State Coordinator. So you really got into it, Jerilyn.
Oh, I did, and I just an amazing. My husband and I, we keep so busy. Just about every weekend we're doing something. I don't have as much time to sew, but today, after I leave, I'm going to go visit my friends and sew. I'm really excited about that too.
Okay.
Does it feel nice?
It does.
Doesn't it?
It does. And I'm just thinking, you know, whether or not we are in favor of a war, we certainly are grateful for those who have given up so much of their energy and their lives and things they've missed out on and all that they've been through, and we certainly do appreciate that. And I think about these quilters, you know, they're working each little thing that they work on, and I wonder what they're thinking. Oh, I'm making this for a special vet, you know. What's in their hearts as they're doing this is so...
The individual, and it's sort of the magical part. It's like when you're working on something for a year, it's like the umbilical cord gets cut and then it goes to the rightful owner. And it's just an amazing thing. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. There's about 10,000 quilters across the United States.